The pattern is it's a capacity mismatch. And the capacity mismatch, like I always like to show with my hands, is that your physical capacity is up here, your tissue capacity is down here, and that gap between them allow you to feel like you're taking it easy, but you're actually smashing your tissue.
Welcome back to another episode of Past Your Prime, the podcast for active adults balancing training, rehab, family, and real life. I'm Alex Kiker, pro volleyball player, working dad, longtime injury connoisseur, here with my favorite physical therapist and coach, Craig the PT Smith. Today, we're breaking down a problem every active person runs into eventually, especially me.
Especially you.
I train hard, I'm consistent, and I keep catching injuries. The kind that don't ever go away or just keep rotating on my body like I'm on a pinwheel of some sort. I don't like it. Today, Craig is going to explain why this happens, how your physical capacity can actually exceed your tissue capacity, and what that mismatch tells you about your system before the next injury hits. Aside from that, we haven't been in the studio together for, I don't know, a month.
Yeah, it's been like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I actually, since that time, I grew hair on my face and on my head. So,
Yeah, I have been getting rid of some of my injury collection.
Which is a big deal.
In these 4 weeks.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, so I don't know. Is there anything else new to note on?
Not for me. This is a topic I think that we've circled around for a while, but it's one that I've wanted to dive into for a long time.
And you said you're training your staff on this currently.
It's not so much I'm training my staff, it's that this is becoming a big discussion point, and it's going to be a pretty big key in how our place operates as we're bringing on additional staff, adding more tools to our toolbox.
Oh, you're like Batman.
Yes.
You've got a tool belt.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Everybody's going to be pulling out Batman catchphrases.
All righty. Okay, so you said that this kind of topic came from a client this week. Would you like to tell me what happened? And am I this client?
The client is actually a amalgamation of a whole bunch of different clients who have the exact same pattern that's developed. This person came in, and during the course of our conversation, their original reason for coming in was a very specific single injury. And after we started to talk more about it, they reported having back symptoms, knee symptoms, shoulder issues. And what was really clear was those other injuries were still there. They just weren't stopping them from doing everything in the exact same way that this new injury was. It was the pattern that stood out because the person's motivation was great. They're actually very healthy in every other way. They were highly motivated to do more and be able to handle more. And so the real issue wasn't that they hurt. It really wasn't that they had this new issue. It was that they were stuck in a pattern that they couldn't get out of.
I've got both. I did have a new issue, but I'm also stuck in this pattern. And I dig myself out a little bit, and then I dig deeper.
Do you know what the pattern is?
Yes. Get hurt, rehab. Get hurt, more. Rehab, more.
Yes.
Get hurt. What's next?
Well, the biggest part that he missed at the start, though, is his physical capacity is incredibly high. And so when you catch that this is happening over and over again, the pattern is it's a capacity mismatch. And the capacity mismatch, like I always like to show with my hands, is that your physical capacity is up here, your tissue capacity is down here, and that gap between them allow you to feel like you're taking it easy, but you're actually smashing your tissue.
Yeah. It's like you're really strong, but you're actually not.
Well, you actually are strong, though. I mean, think about your squats.
I can do squats, yes.
Yeah, so he can squat really heavy, and you'll have times where it hurts you and it didn't feel hard. Right. That's such a key aspect of it. So like the physical capacity piece, it's like it's your strength, it's your ability to actually do the activity, but that tissue capacity where you actually have a good response, that's the piece that you're missing.
And I just need to stop pissing myself off. Mostly my tissues, tendons, joints. all of the above.
Well, it's kind of sneaky though. It is like sneaky because it's not
Because you
like you're
just
actually
wake
out of
up one
fitness.
morning, you can't flex your arm. Yeah, extremely sneaky.
Well, that's kind of leads us to the next piece, right? That it's something that can feel easy, but it causes an injury.
What,
It's
like,
like
give me
sleeping.
an example. Sleeping.
I mean, it could be like it can almost be anything. It can be you tried doing a bicep curl and it wasn't even that hard, but then the next day your elbow is like screaming at you, or you do bench press and you're doing 70 pounds, you know you could have done 90 and you still have shoulder pain the next day. It's like you even feel like you're not even pushing it to that level, but every time that you push it even a little bit, even if it's not even close to your max, you still feel like you get blown up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's me always. I'm fragile.
You're a total fragile.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's Italian.
is that Italian? It's Latin. It's Latin. Yeah, but I mean, I think the big thing on this though is that your perception of how hard you're working, like that perception of effort, is based on physical capacity. But the mistake is that your tissue capacity response is not the same thing, and like that framing is like actually a huge issue because your movement can look beautiful. Like you could probably have where sometimes people will come in and they want to hear from me that they're moving poorly. It's like, no, your movement looks great. Like
Yeah.
that's the issue is not that you're not doing the movement correctly. And then they also feel like, well, is it because I'm getting old? Well, no, it's not also not because you're getting old. This would happen if you were younger as well. This can happen at a very young age and you'll feel like you can't do things and handle it well. But I do know what your framing is, and I can kind of let me predict it actually.
Okay, go
I
for
think
it.
your framing is going to be that it's only happened really recently where you've gotten stuck in this kind of pattern and it's been holding and you're older than what you were before.
I was going to say, yeah, since I've been old and I'm now a year older than I was the last time we recorded, which that may have been 4 weeks ago, but I'm a whole year older in those 4 weeks.
He had a birthday yesterday.
Yeah, it's because I'm getting old.
Yeah, and what I would say is that's just not accurate. It's just this happens to be the time where your pattern has really gone off the rails, and you wouldn't feel that way if your tissue capacity and your physical capacity matched.
I'd like to get back on the tracks.
Yes.
Choo choo.
Well, and but there's also these other reasons, right? Like you're not getting a good feedback loop. Your pain doesn't come on immediately. It feels like super easy. Sometimes it'll feel more like tightness or stiffness, but you tolerate feeling uncomfortable really well, so you'll push right through it. All of those things are happening, and it almost makes it feel unpredictable, but it's really not. It's just your physical capacity is constantly overwhelming your tissue capacity.
Well, yeah, and like that delayed feedback, I think is one that I've noticed a lot more recently, especially with my elbow, but just altogether, like I'll be fine. And, maybe the PEDs that I'm currently on are skewing some of these perceptions because I've generally felt pretty good for the past like 2 weeks, kind of getting all the inflammation out of my body and helping some of my things recover. But
That coincides though with you making some shifts to how you're doing
yeah,
workouts.
I'm trying to be holistic about it.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to, well, I'll have individuals who come in who'll get cortisone injections. They'll do what you're doing. They can have peptides. They may do PRP or stem cell, but it doesn't negate the fact that if you go and you still have this large gap between your tissue capacity and physical capacity, that's the root issue.
Yeah.
And if you overwhelm whatever you just got injected, it does not matter. Like it really doesn't matter. You'll still feel that you fall off a cliff. That buildup of the mismatch can take years to develop, but once it happens, and then once you basically pull the trigger and your tissue capacity now is not handling anything that your physical capacity can do, you now have to correct that. If you don't correct that, it's always going to be a loop back to feeling terrible.
Right. And I know we'll dive into that a little bit more in this podcast, just about kind of average capacities and how all of the factors are included in kind of defining your different capacities and what your daily average is. But back to the physical capacity, can you define that a little bit more specifically? I know we've talked about it a bunch of times in the podcast, but I don't know that we've like put a full on
laid out what it is.
Yeah.
So physical capacity at its root is things that you can actually do and things you can perform. I break it up into a few different categories. Number one is the skills. So those are like the learned abilities that you know how to do, how you can coordinate those actions together. The one that I always use as an example is it's a skill to ride a bike. So if you don't know how to ride a bike, you're probably not going to be doing much bike riding, like that type of thing. You're not going to be doing much swimming if you don't know how to actually swim. It's a skilled behavior. The next one is the things that make up that skill, which would be like your strength, your endurance, your coordination, and your speed. So those are the extra, like the intensities aspect of what you can do with those skills that you've developed. Beyond that, I always think of it as also the mentality or the way that you frame the activity that you're doing. So that can be, hey, I just squatted 135 pounds. That's not hard if your 1 rep max is 500 pounds. That feels really, really light. And so you'll frame some things as relatively light compared to yourself, or you'll frame it as relatively light compared to maybe others. Maybe your training partner is doing 1,000 pounds. Well, then 500 may not seem that big to you, but to everyone else, it's like, holy shit, that's bending the bar.
Right.
Right. And so those kind of comparisons are actually really big to know. And then the last one is your habits and consistency. Something that we talked about early on in the podcast was the idea of putting yourself on your own calendar. That for me comes underneath this physical capacity, your ability to show up to do the activities and things that you actually want to do. That's an aspect of physical capacity.
I relate this to like dunking a basketball. I feel like that is a skill that requires the strength, endurance, speed, mobility, coordination. When it comes to the mentality, I always get fearful that, like, I don't know, 5 years ago, I could lob the ball to myself and dunk it pretty easily. I can't do that right now. I want to do that. But every time I try to set it up, I just get the fear that I'm going to like fly out of the air and, break something.
Yeah, kinesiophobia.
Yeah. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Do I have that?
Well, the way you just said that, you totally do.
I don't want that.
Dude, nobody does. The most common places are your low back and your knees. Those are the ones that
I don't care at all about my low back, but the knees, I need the knees.
They're about your low back?
Not at all. Because I've heard it so many times, like I know I'll bounce back eventually.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of times when people get nervous, it's more the freak nature of it, like where you don't know how bad it could go. It's the almost random nature of having like a really bad response. Those are where people develop kinesiophobia.
Like maybe you're playing kickball.
Dude.
And maybe your leg decides to detach at the knee.
That is messed up. He might be calling out a very specific friend right now. So we do apologize and look forward to helping him get back to being normal.
It's going to be fine.
Yeah. Terrible luck. Like that's terrible luck.
It is. It's bad luck.
Yeah.
Injuries cannot be prevented.
Yeah. No, they can't be prevented. And that's a horrible experience. But so physical capacity for us at SPC, that's run by the coaches. And the coaches are really focused on improving your ability. And we use one of the skills that you're going to learn if you work with our team is be strength training. Like how do you know how hard to work? How do you know how many reps you have in reserve? How hard you're working? What is your 1 rep max? How do you lift a barbell? Those are all skills. And people often when they come in are afraid of using some of those loads. That takes time to get more comfortable with it. And then you build this mentality around it. And the more you do it, it really changes how you perceive how hard you're working. But at the beginning, it'll feel like it's pretty horribly hard. And then eventually it'll be like, oh, today's a deload day and doesn't feel like much. And the deload day will be higher than what you initially started at. So it's like, it's all framing. It's like how your brain actually looks at the problem and the experience. It changes.
It's been fun to see the evolution of Smith Performance Center over maybe 12 years? Is that about when you started?
2015.
2015. Okay. So give or take 10 years. It used to just be how much can you bear crawl? That was the whole premise was how much can you bear crawl? And now there's so much more of a holistic approach to fitness and physical therapy and kind of everything that you guys do. So
it's grown
not to make jokes, but
it's grown a lot. Yeah. The ideas
we did just do bear crawls for the first month.
You were in great shape.
Yeah.
Yeah. We when we first started, it was less on the equipment and more on punishment, I guess.
How far can you bear crawl on a basketball court?
Those are pretty hard.
But I could dunk pretty well back then, so maybe there's something to it.
There is.
Although none of my upper extremities work currently, so I don't think I could bear crawl even if I tried to.
I love it.
Okay, so we have defined the physical capacity, and then the kind of counterbalance to that is the tissue capacity. Do you want to throw a definition there?
Yeah. At a high level, tissue capacity is what your body can handle and have a good response to. I love the dunking example that you just used. That's great. Every time if you dunk and every time you do it, you feel terrible afterwards. It's not that you couldn't dunk. It's not that you didn't have the physical capacity to dunk. It's because it hurt you every single time that you did it. That is a tissue capacity problem, not a physical capacity problem. I think a tissue capacity really, there's two things. The first one is a mechanical property, and that's, does your tissue actually handle it? Or like when you go to jump up, are you tearing a muscle? Are you hurting a tendon? Are you landing and causing a tracheobronchitis in your knee joint? Like those are all aspects of mechanical properties that your body has. And that's a whole bunch of different tissues interacting with each other. It's such a complex idea. And it's all the tissues in your body interacting together, from the cells all the way up to the tissues and organs and everything that are involved in helping you move. And any one of those can be part of the problem. And so at SBC, our big focus is going to be on the mechanical loading ability of it, but there can obviously be other issues that are driving it, and that's where you might need other help. That's what most people think of. But the other part is your threat detector system. So the first one's mechanical properties. The second is your threat detector system. That's your pain. And when we think of those ones, what I always think is interesting is there's two really big aspects of that. The first one's your threshold. Threshold is where you're first going to feel symptoms, right?
Okay.
Second one is tolerance, is how hard you can work and tolerate how uncomfortable you're becoming. So like if I did a squeeze test on your arm and I start to press down and I record the first number where you say, hey, that's painful, that's your threshold. And then as I go and I keep squeezing until you say, man, I can't tolerate this anymore, that's your tolerance. Both numbers are interesting. And the way I always think is kind of funny is when you get stuck in this problem with physical capacity versus tissue capacity being lower, typically what happens is your tolerance increases, you can tolerate more, and your threshold reduces. And all that
Because I
means
feel everything
you
now.
feel everything now. And
Yeah.
like the set point for feeling bad is so much lower. So what that means is you just tolerate feeling crappier all the time. And everything will start to get triggered like that. So stuff that typically wouldn't spike pain will now cause pain. You need to understand that both can be a problem or one can be a problem. So you can have sometimes where the threat detector is messed up, your threshold's too low. Another one could be that your threshold's too high and you're missing signals that you're hurting yourself. And so then you injure yourself. That can also be an issue. Oftentimes the threshold is too high for some people who have really high physical capacity, and then they get hurt, and then it really gets too low. So that threshold can be its own problem. Tolerance can be too much where you push through things that you shouldn't push through. It's like you're ignoring warning signs. And then the last one is your mechanical tissues. There may be reasons why they're not healing and they're not healthy, and that could be its own issue. So tissue capacity is pretty complex in its own right.
And yeah, there's sometimes where my threat detection system is like on point. I'm good. But like catch me in a volleyball game, like it just turns off. There are no threats.
Why do you think that is? Because I totally agree that happens.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I have no clue. I think I've just been trained for so long and have, played in so many matches over the years that it's like, I remember a time, I think it was in 2015, around when I started training with you. Yeah, because it was at this tournament that I tore my labrum in my shoulder. We played 36 sets of volleyball in 3 days. And like by the third day, like we made it to the championship, and like I was done. Like my body should not have been performing anymore. Kept going, probably with a torn labrum, but it was just like, we're in the match. We're playing for the championship right now. I don't care if my shoulder feels like it's going to fall off my body. Like I'm going to keep swinging as hard as I can.
Love it.
And then immediately after, I was like, I can't raise my head. My arm will not move anymore.
So that's been an evolution of my thinking, but I completely agree. And I think we often ignore that experience of training does not happen in a vacuum. Like that your threat detector system is being impacted by the training that you do.
Yeah.
And even sometimes what I also think is you start to associate feeling uncomfortable with as a good thing, because you can feel like the skill development and you can feel like all these other things are happening that are super positive. And because of that, your tolerance does go up, and the importance of it, your motivation. So it heavily interacts with all the training that you've done. I often think of runners, where runners will start to associate pain that they're getting, where it's like their mechanical tissues are being overwhelmed. They'll associate that with the feeling of suffering that they have to be able
like
to
making
do.
gains.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you start to get this like haywire interaction that pulling that part apart is like actually quite difficult, but those totally happen.
Yeah.
And once you understand, oh yeah, man, so I've built up the ability to ignore really critical things about my body, or I completely disassociate from it, or I only think I get progress when I hurt myself, which I actually do think is a problem that you've had, is that you've associated success physical with your physical capacity by your ability to suffer and work really hard. And I think that that's interacted with you ignoring symptoms when your body's not handling the stresses that are going through it.
That makes
And
sense.
it totally happens. And it like totally happens. And that's not going to be solved by a treatment. Like that, you can't solve that type of problem with like some miracle drug,
Yeah.
because that's not the issue. The frame is wrong. Like you just don't realize what the problem is.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep moving here. Who's at risk? Who falls into this mismatch with your tissue and physical capacity? Obviously me, but
So
I
number
can't be
one,
defined.
yeah, Alex, the undefinable Alex Kiker, obviously. I find the most common person suffering from this are the people who have had an exercise history. And it may not even be an exercise history. It's just a high level of physical activity. So people who love running, people who like to go for hikes, people who enjoy their walks, people who would consider themselves exercisers. Those with the most extensive history for this are the ones at most risk, because they're the ones that can get the biggest mismatch.
Well, yeah, I mean, you go through it. I made the reference to playing with a torn labrum, but then, last week I go and squat 135 pounds and I feel a little thing in my knee. I'm like, oh, maybe I should put the caution flag up here now.
Well, it changes and it's very dynamic. And then your experience with injury can obviously drastically change your threshold. But that's why it's important to recognize that there's 3 separate variables that come into it. But people with the most training history, absolutely, they're going to be the person that I feel like that are the worst. People who don't enjoy exercise don't typically fall into this part, because they'll just stop. They'll
Right.
self-select out. So it's people who enjoy being physically active. Like that's just by far the number one. The more skilled you've become, the more easy it is to push yourself really hard, because that's a skill in itself, right? Being able to be uncomfortable. That's a huge aspect of physical capacity. And so when your physical capacity is super high and your tissue capacity doesn't match it, like it's really easy to develop the mismatch. And once the mismatch happens, you can just crush your tissue capacity, but your physical capacity doesn't go down. People who disassociate from their body, that's a really big issue, or they've learned to push through by disassociating.
Put me on the court.
Boom. It's a different thing.
It's all gone.
Yeah. People who get under the bar and they're going to get that bar up no matter what. I always look for people who say they are really strong and they're always afraid to max out. And it's like they've almost released their governor. Like they don't have a governor that tells them to stop from the physical capacity standpoint. I always look for those individuals are really at risk for this developing. Yeah, I think the biggest part though is it's those who are also comparing where they're at currently compared to a mythical version of themselves in the past that often is not actually where they were, or who compare themselves to other people that they're often training with, not recognizing that they're comparing themselves to maybe the top percent of people. And they think they're really falling behind when they're still way ahead of where most individuals are going to be at. Those individuals who really thrive on comparing themselves to others.
Once again, talking about me.
It sounds like I'm talking about you. Yeah.
And then, okay, moving to kind of signs you're in the mismatch. Are there specific things to look out for?
Well, when we were writing the script on this, I looked at this more as just a things that you tell yourself. So we have a list. So here's your list. You've eliminated certain movements because they always hurt. You're getting minor injuries more often. You hurt even when you go light. You feel chronically tight or restricted despite stretching or trying to do your mobility work. You never finish a training block without developing a flare-up. You feel more fragile even though you're training smarter. You confuse feeling strong with being durable. You think that you're just aging.
I'd say I'm probably like half of those.
You're a good portion of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any other ones that you think people will be telling themselves? Like if you think about how you kind of think of it?
I don't know. I just have that kind of like push through mentality most of the time. I've been trying to implement that governor you were just talking about. And it differs because like I'm generally like an upper lower split person. So like right now upper is just not happening. So I'll kind of go a little bit harder on lower body, and then hopefully I'll be able to get both of them into place where I can continue to push. But yeah, right now I've just like slowly been governing myself more and more to like, let's just make sure I feel good at the end of the day. Let's just make sure I feel better tomorrow than I did the day before.
I would actually say that's the biggest change you made. So another one that I don't think I really said is if you feel like you have to push through. Like if you've developed your physical capacity by pushing yourself really hard, learning how to push through discomfort, that's also going to be kind of the story that you're telling yourself. So if you're finding that every workout is like a gut check that you have to push through, that's a sign that you're stuck as
Right.
well, and you don't even realize it.
Well, and I also think like life stresses, we talk about those a lot. Like we haven't been together in 4 weeks, and that's because we've just both had things going on in our day to day lives, which generally I think for both of us means that we're more stressed out than we want to be or need to be.
Yep.
Because we both really enjoy making these podcasts. And I don't know, it's just weird when we're not able to get together because it's like 1 week, like, oh, I've got this going on and you've got something else going on.
Yeah.
And yeah. And so I think life stress all compounds into it to like this multifactorial equation that we're talking about.
Yeah. So it's the individuals who have a lot on their plate, right? I mean, it's like the people who have a lot of duties, a lot of things outside of even just doing the exercise. So obviously you're going to be falling into this too. If you have a ton of life stressors and you've learned how to juggle all of them because you've developed all these skills around
Yeah.
it, but that's not happening once again in a vacuum. That's still stressing your body, and things like where you're not sleeping well, you feel like your stomach's more upset. You're finding that you develop headaches, like all these like other like small things that don't seem like they'd be related. Those are also all signs that you're probably falling into this problem, this mismatch pattern.
My stomach's just upset because I ate 10 pounds of Korean meat last night, but
That's actually not a joke. So he actually ate 10 pounds of Korean meat last night for
it
his
was so
birthday.
good. It was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still paying for it though.
Yep. We started late because of it. Still not healthy.
Still not healthy. Not good for my cholesterol. But then, okay, so we talked about, the mismatch. A lot of people think rest is the answer. Why does rest not fix it?
Rest doesn't fix it because you're making an assumption that resting is improving your tissue capacity. So like, I mean, at the end of the day, the big thing to understand about this is tissue capacity doesn't just happen because you take time off.
Right.
It is actually a balance between what triggers you're doing in your day-to-day life. Some of those triggers are obvious. If your back hurts and every time that you back squat over 100 pounds, your back gets flared up, that's an obvious trigger. But in this situation, you're not dealing with just obvious triggers. You're also dealing with hidden triggers. And those are the ones where you don't get an immediate feedback loop telling you that you hurt yourself. I've used the example over and over again. It's really obvious that you hurt yourself if you put your hand on a hot burner. The hot burner is what burned you, right? But imagine if every surface around here, you didn't get any information, but all of those could hurt you. It's a very big issue. That's a hidden trigger. And if you have hidden triggers, and you do have hidden triggers, like everybody has them, when you get into this situation, those hidden triggers become a constant problem, and you taking rest off of the obvious trigger, which is like the squat, doesn't eliminate those other ones.
Yeah.
And then the other part is that oftentimes you're already doing some level of treatments. And for us, the way we define treatments are things that increase your tissue capacity. The things that you think are treatments could be a symptom masker. Symptom masker means it reduces your pain, but it doesn't improve your tissue capacity. Sometimes those are incredibly useful, especially when you hurt yourself acutely. But then you also have things like false therapeutics where it reduces your pain in the moment, but it actually reduces your tissue capacity, which you guys have heard me rail on, stretching being like the biggest culprit of that, but it's not the only one. And there's all sorts of things like that. So oftentimes people will take rest, then they'll also throw some treatment on it. The treatment actually might be an actual trigger making them worse. So the reason rest doesn't work is you have to be very proactive in developing a therapeutic gap and actually improving your tissue capacity. I don't think rest does that. And it definitely doesn't do it in this situation because you're typically your average level of activity is already overwhelming your tissue capacity.
Yeah. And I think we'll dive into that in just a minute here. So finding or fixing the mismatch, what's the right process for fixing when you find your mismatch?
I always think it's really, for me, it's four things, and I'll hit all the top level of all four. But the first one is just recognizing that you have the situation happening, which is you have a high physical capacity and a low tissue capacity. that's the most important part, because if you don't recognize it, it'll never get better, because you'll be somebody in search of a constant treatment or constantly cutting something out. Like that doesn't fix the problem.
Yeah.
The next one is correct your frame. And that's the part where if you are thinking that what you're doing is super easy, but your body's still feeling terrible from it, obviously it's not easy for your tissue capacity. So you need to separate the idea from physical capacity. You're working hard. You're trying to progress how much you could lift, to every exercise, every workout has to actually cause a good response. And you have to set your workouts. We call it the rehab standard at SBC. You need to use that. Perform a body inventory is number 3. Make sure that you actually know all the issues. I think it's incredible how often we hide things that are bothering us until we're forced to actually admit, oh yeah, I've actually hurt in like 7 places. Like this is
I can't walk anymore.
yeah. I guess that's why I've been using the wheelchair. And then the last one is developing a therapeutic gap. You need your treatments, the stuff that's building tissue capacity, to be higher than the triggers that are taking away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Most often when you get stuck in this situation, you either have a trigger gap where your triggers are more than your treatments, or they're in equilibrium. And when they're in equilibrium, it just means that you're never improving. You're just staying at the same place. That's where most people in this problem stay at. They actually get into equilibrium. Tissue capacity never builds. And then they get in this repetitive cycle of just hurting themselves until, I hope this doesn't happen, but normally what happens is then you fall into a doom loop, which is the worst thing.
And we also have full episodes on body inventory, therapeutic gap. So feel free to check those out if you want. And that, yeah, I think that kind of sets us on our path towards our next episode, which is the doom loop.
It's the doom loop. The doom loop is something that, just to kind of hit it at a top level, it's what I think most people who find that they can do less and less stuff, it can start off really subtle, and it starts off with you taking one thing out. Hey, I'm not going to sit anymore at work because my back hurts. I'm only going to stand. Or it could be, I'm not going to play basketball anymore, or I'm going to quit doing volleyball, or I'm going to take out something, one of these like high level activities. And then you slowly start taking away more and more things, because more and more things start to hurt you and cause issues, till eventually, yeah, everything is causing problems where you feel like you're just catching all these injuries, you're catching all these problems. That's an injury doom loop. And when that happens, it takes effort to get out of it, which will be the focus of our next episode.
I'm trying to get out of it myself. If you feel like you're always one workout away from another setback, this isn't bad luck. It's a mismatch between your ability and your durability. Craig just walked through how to identify it, what's happening under the surface, and how to start rebuilding. And looking forward to our next episode going over the doom loop that we just talked about. If you haven't done so yet, check out Past Your Prime podcast on Instagram. We're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere that you can find podcasts. Give us a like, comment, subscribe, rate us, but only 5. None of this 4 stuff. We don't want any 4s. We want 5s. We'll see you on the next one.
BYB, baby.
Peace.